Welcome, everybody. My name is Alenka Poplin, and I'm so happy to start this session on games and analog games, particularly. It is a series that is all part of my class, and I have students, undergraduate and graduate students here enrolled in the class GeoGames and Civic Engagement. And also, I am coordinating game design major at Iowa State University. I'm very happy today to welcome Dr. Mikel Sousa as our lecturer today, presenter. And I am super excited. He is I would say, game design instructor, but also serious game developer, a board game designer, reviewer, and he published his Design Your Game Kit, game creator set that you can see in the background. So a kit that helps people to learn about game design process. So we would like to advertise that as well, so many can purchase this set and learn how to design games. But on the academic side, he has a PhD in spatial planning, in very interdisciplinary background, graduated in civil engineering and history, master in energy and environment and heritage studies. So I'm so excited about your talk, and welcome in my class, and welcome everybody joining online as well. Thank you so much. The floor is yours, Mika.
It's really an honor to be here, because when I started to get into this research about games, especially for urban planning, Poplin was one of the most cited and the most important references I had read. So being here, it's quite an honor, and I'm a little bit nervous because it's not every day we present some of our work. When we read so much about it read so much about it with a person that inspired us a lot, and that's your case. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's very interesting. I know that some people also have this experience of reading a lot about someone and then meeting them in person. It's very, 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 I don't know even how to describe it. It's very strange and good simultaneously, and very stressful also. But I'm here to share something. I hope I'll say something because I hope this is useful. I will share this. Let's hope you can see it. Are you seeing it?
Yeah, we can see very well.
Okay,
Maybe
because
if you click on the presenter, we would see only one slide, like presenter view.
let's see because I have multiple screens and this is always.
Yeah.
So are you seeing it?
If you click on that presenter view down below, we would be able to see just one slide. Now we see several slides also on the side.
And now?
The same.
Still the same?
Yeah.
Strange.
You know, down below in the presentation, you have this icon of, yeah, down lower. Yeah, if you click on that one.
The problem is that I have multiple screens.
Otherwise is under view. Yeah.
And now?
It's the same.
The same. I hate this. It's a problem of having a lot of screens.
Yeah. You have to change on all of the screens, I guess.
Maybe that's it.
Or maybe you can zoom in a bit more.
And now?
It's the same.
The same. I don't know how to change this without disconnecting the screens.
Yeah.
maybe I'll just use one
Yeah.
and disconnect. And maybe this will work. So share, is it full now?
It's still the same.
Very strange, because
don't
I
know.
see it full.
Yeah, and we don't. Alternatively, you could go to down below to zoom in a little bit, so we could maybe, but yeah, this would probably not change much. It's okay, we can survive with that one.
Can you see it like this?
We can look at it like this, yes.
Okay, because this is strange. I'm just using one screen and this should.
Maybe up there you could go under, I see you have in Portuguese, but there's a view option, view full screen. If you go in the command on the top, yeah, there must be view full screen option.
Oh, it's in the standard view.
Okay, let's go then. Let's go. Doesn't matter. We can see it.
Can you see it?
Yeah, people are saying that maybe you are sharing the wrong monitor. If you can see it, but we don't, so maybe sharing the other monitor.
Yeah, let me change to another.
Would be an alternative. I can show you my students in the middle.
Okay.
Everybody can say hello. It's a full class. Okay. So they are undergraduate and graduate and one PhD student.
And now, is it better?
It's the same. Let's just go. Yeah, let's just do it. Don't worry, we will enjoy your presentation. I will turn off I will mute myself and turn off my video so it can be undisturbed. And then if you have questions, I can jump in and answer. So it's gonna be okay.
Let me see if this way is it better. Are you seeing it better? Bigger?
This is excellent. This is
okay,
excellent.
so you are seeing what I'm seeing. It should not
perfect.
be
Yeah,
like
this
this,
is
but
great.
okay.
Yeah,
If it's working, let's go.
it's working. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I will talk a bit about these analog series games and how we can use them for participatory and planning process. So I'm not seeing the chat and I'm not seeing you. So if you want to interact with me, please do it with a microphone. So I'm not seeing the chat and the other stuff. So the main question here is if participation is important or not. And this is something to start usually when I try to argue that games are a good solution for it. And one of the things that is one important outcome is that games or participation is a way to introduce innovation and ways to collect data that we will not get by other means, and ways to adapt the proposals of planning solution, a project, whatever, to the user's needs, and also ways to achieve awareness, adaptation, and discussion, and sometimes acceptability. Because usually the users or the citizens or the stakeholders are not aware of some of the technical difficulties or the technical dimensions of a specific project. And the collaboration, the participation can go into collaboration, which is, we could say, that is a deeper level of participation, where when we achieve collaborative planning, when the user's participation influence the outcomes, and this usually includes a learning process. And you are seeing here in the bottom 2 images of the municipal strategic plan done with games. So participatory that went into collaboration through games. And another case, it's a urban planning process, something that was funded by the European Union about urban security in the city. And now to try to justify why games are important in this process to increase participation in collaborative planning. We can use serious games or gamification. I imagine that you are familiar with these two different concepts. I will talk about serious games because usually I do games from the start to the end as a part of a process. So people are playing games as planning support tools, and this is why I usually frame them. So the games itself are another tool that planners or decision makers use to collect data and to help build better plans, hopefully at least. So games can provide playable models. We can test decision making and see the results in the game because reality can be modeled and games are models. And we can foster players' agency where in these models, in these playable models, they learn by doing and learn by failing. So game, it's not like in the previous lecture, games are not reality. So we can do whatever we want in the games, but we can make these parallels with reality, reflecting on the things that agents or players do in the games. And when we do multiplayer games, we can implement collaborative play. So our game can be collaborative. So this way, it's better for approach the collaborative planning approaches. And during games, it depends on the design, and I'll talk about some of the design elements. We can get consensus building and negotiation. But there are problems. Games are difficult to create. They oversimplify planning problems, and in our goal to deliver playability, we can simplify the complexity of reality, and that can be a problem. And game results data can be inconsistent and unfit for reality. So this could be problematic. And as you probably know, creating games, it's not easy. They take time, they require a lot of knowledge, and we can try to use some of the entertainment games available, trying to fit them for our serious purpose. In this case, serious is something beyond entertainment. For example, collecting information of what the stakeholders want for a specific region, a specific spatial reality, and but usually we need to adapt them, and they are not very fit for our reality. And one of the things that I try to claim is that we can use analog games to do this. Of course, they have some limitations, but usually we don't have a lot of resources, and they are easier to produce and adapt. And sometimes they are enough to deliver the things that we want them to deliver. And especially for the case of collaborative planning, with analog games, we can easily create these collaborative experiences for the users, because when we are in face-to-face interactions, and this is also part of the game design, when we need to enforce the rules of an analog game, so there's no automation, so the game cannot enforce the rules by itself. So we need the players to learn the game and help each other to understand it. And this is like a trick to enforce also collaboration, so we could easily do collaborative planning processes. So, but let's go into the thing that might be the most different and my biggest contribution, I hope. So some authors say that we are living in the board game golden age. So you can see this image. This is not from this year. This is from 2 years ago when I was there in Essen in Germany. So 2,400 people attended this year, and in several days it was totally sold out. So there's a big industry that is becoming bigger, and a lot of interest from a lot of people from this new what we say, well, how we describe them as modern board games. So a lot of games, a lot of things, and these games are different. For example, this game, it's a game about the Sicilian um, mafia. So they are trying to control the city. So the city, the region, the island, uh, controlling and making schemes to control the economy and the populations. So this is a game that is not for children, for adults. And these new design elements are player agency, innovative game mechanics, captivating themes and narratives. And this is an example of something different that captivates some of the users. So they provide playable face-to-face experiences in interaction with objects, and you can see that the design here, it's very, I think it's pretty, it's engaging. Although they are only cubes and discs, we can do this in the way that the media, in this case the object, the artifact, it's compelling for the users. But it's the game, it's only compelling because of the game mechanics also, not just by the look of the game. But there's also a movement that people are start to gathering to play board games everywhere. And now we are seeing board game cafes all over the world where people engage in a social environment that is fueled by games and not by other technologies, for example, not digital technologies. People go here to play these games and to be with other people. And of course, these modern designs foster this, and we can always also say that we are living in a post-digital world where digitalization is everywhere, and people are seeking other types of experiences, and this face-to-face and face-to-face experiences with other people and interaction with objects, it's something compelling nowadays. And for example, this is my local game group that I'm one of the founders, and we create a lot of activities in social spaces for interaction fueled by these games. So people are gathering around. But the main question is, can we use these games for planning and use this face-to-face social interaction, these new game experiences, the user agency? So no automation to enforce the game rules, but agency. So these games are not random. They are not, this is not rolling a dice and advancing and see what happens. So you make decisions and you see the effects of your decisions. And we have some freedom to adapt and change these games, and the fascination to interact with objects and the collecting aspect of it is also important. So these are some of the modern board game characteristics, but there's a lot of games out there. So you can see some Civ building games, one of the modern ones. So you can see a lot of people engaging and interacting. We can see a lot of games that explore this three-dimensional representation, creating these miniatures that are very engaging. This is a dungeon crawler, similar to a role-playing game that you see in digital games. And I always try to say this, that board games are technology, and some of the most well-known games are very old. And as you see, if automobiles and computers evolved, board games also evolved. So we have new things right now. And there's something important. This is a case that the process of this denazification of Germany led to something very unique. That was a new type of games where competition without attacking and eliminating players was born. So this was the born of Euro games. Despite the first Euro game was made by the North American, but it was in Germany that this was really developed into something new that in the start of the 21st century influenced the design of board games everywhere in the world. So now we have very different types of games, and we have here an example of a game that won the first Spiel des Jahres in Germany, 79. Although this is created by David Parlet, that is from England. This game represents the change of the industry. That is, this is a race. While two animals are competing, and you can see that one is very fast. But this game, you advance spending carrots. And the more you advance, the more you spend carrots. So it's exponential. So a game that forces to manage your resources. It's not luck. It's not rolling dice and see what happens. It's managing the resources. So this was something very important in the industry that years later impact what we have today. But also very important was this game. So Trivial Pursuit is important. It's not considered a modern board game because there's a lot of random elements in them, but it's an example that changed the view that adults can play games for the sake of playing games. Because in the older games, usually players played for money or in tournaments or in gambling. In this case, you play for the intrinsic experience of playing the game. In this case, if you are good at the game, it means that you have a good culture. So something that it's changing the way users see the value of playing a game. So there's a lot of non-modern games out there, and usually these are some of their characteristics: low complexity, low duration, low prices, and low quality of the materials, and usually they have player elimination and lower player agency. So a lot of luck involved, and you can be removed from the game. That is something that modern board games do not do. So we want players engaged in the games, don't want them removed from the games. And there's a lot of examples of this non-modern games. And another thing is the ludonarrative dissonance. This is when the mechanics doesn't fit the narrative, and you have this example in Monopoly, that is why rolling a dice and have a random journey, so you don't know where you will stop, is connected to the real estate or the property sector. So this is not how people buy houses. It's not how they invest. It's not a result of random effects. It's a result of analyzing the market, of auctions and stuff like that. So this is not a way to do it. And in these modern board games, we try to connect the mechanics to the things we are trying to simulate, so we can create better simulations and we can create impact and meaningful experience for the players. Are you receiving me? Because I'm talking all by myself and I don't know if I'm connected. Can you
We are
please
all
say?
we're
Oh,
yes,
you are there.
we are all here listening, and it's very interesting. So
And
very
my
exciting.
English
Thank
is
you
not
so
that
much.
good.
Your
So,
English is excellent. We can
okay.
understand you.
So,
Everybody's
great.
nodding. We're happy. Thank you
Okay,
so much. Yeah.
let's go. So a brief history of this. So we have the first civilizations. Each one had their games. We know games that are as old as civilization itself. There's traditional games. Every culture has its own games. But in the 19th century, associated with to the industrialization, to the easiness of create mass products, games started to appear because families started to add more time and money. So some of these games were developed, but these games did not bring innovation. They were almost all alike, rolling dice and moving, and and then something happened. That was in the mid 50s of the 20th century, with the born of digital games. Some of the games that the military used started to become available, and this transformed games and the way the public interacted with games differently. So we started to see games that have narratives that try to simulate realities, and this was something completely new because the military have used these games at least for 200 years. So they started to appear, some hobby games started to appear, and then things started to change. For example, there's the born of the narrative games in 1974 with Dungeons and Dragons. So new things started to appear. Then Euro games started to appear. So games that were not about war and not about fantasy, games that simulated other stuff, trying to engage more players. And this was created by the players that wanted something different. So a lot of things appeared, and then in the 90s, the collectible card games, and also the miniature games, and now in this post-digitalization era, we can say that there's still a lot of hybrids out there, and this is how we say that we are living in the revolution, because all these games are merging together, and there's a boom of new games appearing everywhere, whereas there's a lot more innovation, more games, more players playing them, more communities, more applications, more opennesses of the community. So less geek and more open to newcomers. And the combination of all these type of games creates an immense and infinitive possibilities for the players to get the games that will make sense for them. So you can see here the quantity of games being published per year, just the ones that are tracked here in Board Game Geek. That is the website to look about modern board games. And let's see some examples. We have an example here of a war game, a tactical one, because we can have strategic games that show big operations, and these ones that are more tactical, that are about movement of some units. So this is a simulation of the units, the firepower, the distance that they can reach a target, their range, their velocity, the effects of the terrain, the visibility, the weather effects. So all are simulated here, so they can be quite complex. The case of Dungeons and Dragons, a game where there's a game master that defines a narrative, a representation of the players with their these sheets that are the player profiles with their characteristics, the things that they can do, cannot do according to the narrative that is controlled by the game master. Some will use miniatures to represent the players and the walls that are created. And this is a game that evolves and evolves and develops according to the players' agency's decisions and the structure of game that is controlled by the game master. So the game is happening in reality in the players' minds. So this is the collective imaginary space of the game. And this is an example of a simulation game, a specific type of train game that simulates train companies. So this is the 18xx is a type of game, very complex and very detailed in economic simulation and the spatial representation of these entities. We have here the first Euro game that was created by an American in 1963. That is a game that tried to do something different, not a war game, but like a war of companies that were operating in the real estate market. So this is quite an impactful game that impacted the German industry and the born of the modern board games in the 18s, in the 90s. And the case of Euro games, you see here the case of Puerto Rico. That is a game where you are colonizing the island of Puerto Rico and developing the economy, developing the buildings, exporting goods to Europe. So a game that tries to do that. But this was a very important game. It's from the early 21st century. But this game is so important because it led to a lot of discussions. Because in this case, it's a simplification of this economic process, removing the negative part of the history, that is the slavery. So you can see there's those brown discs are slaves that are used in the game. And this led to a lot of discussions. You can see papers about this. And this shows one of the dangers of simplifying history and trying to make it abstract. But fortunately, the designers and the publishers changed this, and now we have new versions of the same game that deals with the slavery effects in history and in economic. So this is a good example to show, but I will show more games about this type of issues. So you have collective card games. The first one, Magic the Gathering, still very popular with economic business model specific that allowed it to have stores everywhere in the world that were very important to even to board games, because in these stores there's board games also, there's more than just cards. And of course Warhammer with miniatures, where we represent worlds in a three-dimensional way, but where we try to simulate battles, but also where the joy of painting and creating these walls is also part of the game. And also live action role play. This is being quite successful, quite impactful right now, where you mix representations in reality with some game rules, so you have immersive analog experiences. and there's a lot of them. Some of them are simulations of entire battles. For example, imagine that you battle as a legionary in the legion formation, or you fight as a Viking in the shield wall. This exists. And here an example how these modern board games avoid ludonarrative dissonance. This is a very interesting game. It's a game about the Cold War. It's a game about controlling the two superpowers, trying to control the world without doing a nuclear war. If a nuclear war exists, both players lose the game. So they need to control their influence without creating a global war. So you can see that there's influence of blue influence of North Americans and red influence of the Soviet Union represented in these spaces in the board. And there's events, and this one is event about the end of the Portuguese Empire. And for example, when this happens in the game, the Soviet Union gets influence in Angola and Mozambique. So this is a connection between the narrative and the mechanics of adding pieces to specific places with numbers, so you can see the influence of each superpower. So something that is done in a very simple way, but represents what was really at stake in this conflict. And we are really changing the paradigm. So can you see this picture? This was advertising as fun for all the family. I have a pity that I'm not there, because usually people react to this. So you can see that only the males are playing while the women are dishwashing in the back. But they are very, very. It seems that they are having a lot of fun doing this. So this is something that was common some years ago, but fortunately this changed, and now we have women that are game designers that are creating new games, and this is example of a very successful game, a game about uh, birds, about the ecology and the habitats of birds that interconnect between them, and it was a huge success. And this is how we are advancing in game design, in modern board game design, where new themes are available and we can find mechanics to express them. And this is also a very interesting example. This is a game that is about a relationship simulator of two persons. It's called Fog of Love. And this game was created by a designer that wanted to have a game to play with his wife that didn't enjoy the games that were in the market. And when he tried to pitch this game to a publisher, they said, there's no market for this. But he decided to fund it by itself, and now it's a big success, because it means that because this was never done, the market reacted that then no one will ever want this. But if this doesn't exist, it doesn't mean that the people don't want it. And this is a very interesting game, especially to study in the game design perspective, because we are simulating feelings. So very interesting to see. And fortunately, fortunately, there are games that are addressing the complicated themes of history. In this case, you have a game about slavery, so the Underground Railroad, that you play together to try to free the most slaves as possible, and the game is playing against you. The game is the slave hunters that will try to get the people that are trying to escape slavery. So a game about that issue that is an active way to understand and to learn about what was this historic phenomenon. Also, a historical phenomenon here created the infamous Traffic, that is a game about the Opium War, when the British Empire tried to introduce opium into China to open their borders, so creating another black page of European and colonial history. So there's a game about this. But let's do here a summary of what are the importance of this modern board game design elements. So they are meaningful and deterministic. So actions generates results. So we can create relationships between the two things. We have a lot of innovative mechanisms, so we can support simulation, the quality of the components, the art, and the graphical design that creates immersion and meaning, and controllable duration, so we know exactly how much time the games will take will last. So we know the duration, so we can use it, for example, for classrooms or for public and participatory and collaborative engagement with stakeholders and citizens. So if we have 1 hour, we can develop a game to last 1 hour. And these conflict-free and collaborative interactions and the avoidance of player elimination is very important, and we have continuous involvement and engagement, and it's the things that we want when we do these games for serious purposes. And these various themes and narratives allow us trying at least to fit all player profiles, and we know there's a lot of them, and that people and players seek different things, so we should have games that are able to deliver that. But a bit more into game design. So you learned about the MDA in the last session. I saw it, and this is the MDA for digital games, but for analog games, the MDA is different. Because there's no enforcement of the rules, the players interact directly with the mechanics, with the dynamics, with the aesthetics or the experiences, as I will frame next. So it's more challenging for the players, but this opens the possibility of the human to object interaction. In this case, the object is the game. So an example, for example, do you know the game of checkers? The mechanic, for example, is pattern movement. You are moving the pieces around. The dynamic can be capturing the pieces because it's a game about capturing pieces. And the experience or the aesthetic when your piece is captured is aggression. So this is why some people try to see a war represented there. So just to introduce and to remember the MDA. But I wrote a paper about this, and in the board game design field, we usually use the name mechanisms and not mechanics. Why? For example, imagine that a car here is a vehicle to play, and the car has aesthetics, has narratives, can make these comparisons, but the car has an engine, which is the mechanic. But this mechanic of the car is a combination of smaller mechanisms in motion. And this is a concept of mechanisms adapted to board games, because we can go into a more granular analysis and identifying them. And when we are able to identify them, we can combine them in new ways to create new models. So this is my claim, and this is published in the paper. You can see here there's a reference. I was the lead author of this, where I try to even differentiate the mechanisms from mechanics and say that mechanics are something that is between mechanisms and dynamics. But if you want to go deeper into this, you have the paper to follow. At this point, I will say that there's a book that is very important. That's the book you should follow if you want to go into analog and tabletop game design, that does this proposal of dividing or grouping the mechanisms by types of mechanisms, for example, resolution, game structure, and then have a lot of them detailing them. So this is the book, Building Blocks for Tabletop Game Design. This is the first edition, but now there's a second edition, but you can also look for these game mechanisms in Board Game Geek, though that website that I said that has everything, so you can see them, and you see the games that have them and these connections in this website. And there's now a second version, a second edition of this book that is very influential, and I always recommend this for people that are entering game design, even though if it is digital, because this will help a lot to give ideas how the mechanics and the mechanisms connect to the thing we want to simulate and design. So, and there's also some literature that recommends some analog game design exercises even to create digital games. And this is a framework that I'm developing right now. I wish to publish this next year. I created a framework, a gamified framework, to help users to develop games, and this is a session during Foundations of Digital Games conference in 2023, where I tested successfully this approach. And I tested this also with several workshops. This one is specifically for teachers, where they are using the framework to develop game-based learning with analog games. And this is even tested with hobby players. This is a national board game convention where they are using the framework to create new games, because in almost every hobby board gamer there's a potential designer. And you see here the same, it's not the same, it's a simplification of this framework that is tested at UCD. I've created this for University College Dublin, our projects, because we want teachers to use this to create games, to engage with children, to create new tools for urban and spatial planning participation. So this is a transformation of this framework into something more visual. And this is my game that was presented last weekend, so very recent, where I transformed this into a product that is a sequence of several games that are interconnected and that allow the users to see new mechanics, the effects of them, combining and identifying the mechanisms there. And it's a playable box, so we have different games that start from something very similar, very close to what is a mass market game of rolling dice and advancing, and then it will change into something more modern, one that is more strategic and one that is more like an adventure. And you see here the flicking game that is the adventure with a narrative, with some illustrations, and every materials here are you can set them as you wish, so they are ready to erase and to create and to add and to adapt. So this is a product that is coming to the market. For now, it's only available in Portugal. It will be available in other countries in Europe, and hopefully all over the world. But about city building games, so I'll try to be very fast because I know we don't have a lot of time because of these problems in the beginning of this lecture. But there's something very interesting in the modern board game scene. That is, a lot of board games are about creating cities, and a lot of them have the names of cities, which is quite strange, something that doesn't happen in digital games. So I did some surveys. This is part of my doctoral thesis, where I try to see why people are playing these games about creating cities in games that have the name of cities. So you can see here these games. Some of them are very well ranked in the Board Game Geek, that is the website we use to rank games. And you can see here some examples. And in these games, in the surveys, we see that some of these games are interesting for the users because they simulate, for example, the urban fabric, they simulate the economy of cities, the historical context, the social dimensions, the environmental dimensions, the transport system. And you see games that try to do this, and they are enjoyed by the users. And then some traits of these games about building cities. For example, some of them have cultural information of the places. They represent these realities in different ways, maps that can be 2D, 3D, multiple scales, simplified or not. Some use miniatures and dioramas about the things. Some use miniatures about the buildings and the urban fabric. And some use quantifiable information about the urban indicators, for example, population, pollution, wealth, something like that. And there's also a lot of games with names of cities. You can see here Carcassonne, that is a city in France, Lisboa, that is the capital of Portugal, Praga, the capital of Czechia, Orleans, a city in France. So a lot of them. But what is interesting here is that some of these games only approach a specific dimension of the city. Sometimes it was an historical event. Sometimes it was a crisis that happened in that city. For example, in the case of Lisbon, it's the earthquake of the 18th century. For example, and Tikal, it's the archaeological finding of the city. And Troyes is like you are managing the medieval classes at the time. In, for example, Nusfjord, you are focusing, that is in Norway, you are focusing on the fishing industry. So a lot of things to explore here and to build our playable models. And you can see how these games are implemented here. You see Lisbon, Lisboa, you can see Carcassonne, where it's very abstract with the tiles, but you are building a map. You can see in case of Orleans here, it's about the trade of the city, because it was a city very important in the medieval ages because of the trading. You can see here another representations, things done with different elements, some that are more that are representing real the structure of the city, others that are very abstract, like here in case of Istanbul. So a lot of ways to do this. And then I ask the participants, why do they play these games? Or why are they successful? And we see here that people like games about building, development, managing. They like maps. They like the historical background, the sense of belonging, relatable to a city. This is ways to travel into new realities. Uh, but also they think from a design perspective that this is easy to do because it's something relatable. It's something that you just need to replicate a thing that already exists, and it's good for marketing. I think these are important findings that show us that maybe games really are a way to engage with citizens and stakeholders, because people are fascinated by cities. And then I try to find the mechanics, how these games are done. And this is a process. You can see in my thesis how it was done. It was a survey in Board Game Geek with games that were defined as games with territory and city building. So there's also games about territory, and this is the quantity of mechanisms that were existing in these games, and some were not identifiable because it is the designers and the users that identify the mechanisms. So some I had to add them, and you see here some of the most important ones, like pattern buildings. So cities are patterns, and these patterns can be transported into games. And set collections is, for example, when you combine different things, you generate new outcomes. So for example, if you have a developing zone with some commerce and residential zones, if they have a road or a transport, they increase, they grow. So this is these things transporting into abstract things that are these mechanisms. And there's also some of these representations, how these spatial dimensions are appear in this game. So we can see that miniatures, cards, and strings and tiles are used to represent the space. The scale can be blocks, buildings, and regions. We can do this with some different grids like hexagons and point-to-point and squared. You can see that some of the themes, even you can see tourism in these games about governing a city, some about the cultural activities. Some of them approach energy, waste, health, pollution, transport systems. We see a lot of things. And then I created these tables where I identified the mechanics, what are the things that they are doing in the games, and what are the things that they are simulating, for us to have a framework to consult and to create new games when we try to build something new. But you can see that in more details. And now some case studies about this application to real case studies. You can see this game, it's published in the paper. Well, the reference is not correct, sorry, but I can send it. This is something that I didn't change in the pay step. But it's published in a journal about media, and the name is Moving Cubes Around, and how we can build cities, city building games just with cubes. And you can see here in this case, there's this table, it's the economy of the game. When you change cubes and their effects, and you can see that the cubes are land uses, facilities, and parts of the transport system. And you can see here the numbers are the evolution of the city after the decisions of the players. And you can see here another example where just tracks, this is a neighborhood of the city of Porto here in Portugal, where it's represented by cubes and colors, and there's a lot of tracks that represent urban indicators. And as the players change things in the city, in the model, the urban indicators also change. Case study 2, it's a game, it's a framework. It's this one, the reference, it's correct. It's published in Simulation in Gaming, the journal. It's a game where I try to engage non-player participants. And you can see here that people are using this map. It's a real city with the strings. This is to simulate the urban transport system. But this was played in a theater with 70 persons attending and seeing this. And they were invited to come to the stage to play the game or to try to influence the players while playing the game. And there's economy to it, so you can see the details in the paper if you want to see how the games was built. And this prove and engage the people. So the experts that were there could not play, but they tried to influence the participants, trying to create better solutions. Case study 3, it's about my city. It's an European project that was about improving the safety in the city center, because it's a historical city, and some of the morphology and activities in the city center can create some problems. And so we try to with the municipality to invite stakeholders to help the city improve in this dimension. So this was a co-design approach with 3 levels. The first one was imagination of the ideas, problem location, and then collaborative planning to solve the problems and try to make the solutions technical and viable and accepted by the users that were the players, and created a narrative that they played as the counselors of the city. So, and you can see the several phases. The first phase is using games and some group dynamics to identify some of the proposals to put in the game. The second phase is about knowing the territory in more detail, and there's some drawing games to do this, to engage people and to identify these things. And this is the actual game. It's like a budget allocation game. This is also published in my thesis. You can see in the left this stakeholders, so you can see a representative of the police, you can see representatives of the shop owners and the residents and inhabitants and the experts playing the game. And this was such a success that the real counselors wanted to play the game, and they are here playing the game in the right. So you can see some images, some games in the first level to foster imagination. I use some Dixit cards to foster imagination. You see here some drawing games. People are drawing and interacting. And the goal was, as I explained, to create a way to represent the priorities, to make decisions in a collaborative way. Most of the game mechanics were resource allocation and interactive tables. You can see here the scheme. People got votes and that identify the problems, and that the votes were transformed into a budget that they needed to manage collectively to build a better solution. And you can see here people playing the game, and you can see that a plan emerges from these maps, where, for example, you can see the public transport system being formed, the parts of the city that need reparation of the housing to be more safe and more adequate, places to add more parks, more public illumination, lighting. And you can see here the real councils and the mayor playing the game, playing as themselves, which is curious. And you can see the public servants of the municipality playing together from different departments, and they said that they never done an experience like this where all of them were participating in the same activity, which is something that should concern us all. And you can see a result of the game. You can see that it identifies the things to do, the several proposals, and it creates like a plan. So, and then you can bring this information to digital tools, and they could do some analysis of the things of the different groups and see which patterns emerge. So we can create like reports for this is why I said this was a planning support tool, so we can support the municipality with the decisions, so they can build the actual plans based on this if they wish. And then children wanted to participate also, so I adapted the game to just to simulate the surroundings of their school, but using a similar game to allocate budget to change and to create a safer city for them. Case study 4, it's another thing, another city. It was a game about creating an efficient network of schools where the municipality would have enough schools that all children would have a school that was closer to their home, and that allowed us to have a more efficient coverage of the space with schools, with good schools for the children. And this was a facility location problem, which is something very traditional in solving in optimization models. But I created a game to simulate this, but first I needed to develop this optimization model, find a solution. I used some software to solve it because it takes millions of calculus to do this, and then I develop a game to simulate the same thing. And first I tested with a small town of the municipality, and then I needed to correct it and create a better solution that we could play this in 45 minutes, and where users would simulate the same thing that is done in Optimizer. So this needed to do some changes, for example, grouping the students, creating a user representation of the territory, represent the location and the capacity of the schools with tables, as you can see that. You can see a lot of ships piled up. That's the quantity of students that live in each hexagon. So there's the density of students. You can see the schools located there. There are the small buildings, and you can see tables to track how much public transport systems do you need to travel children around, and this all generate costs, and this is how we can see our solution. And you can see a player aid, so we are more into game design and to try to transform this model into a game. And you see this was tested in my university at the time, that was the University of Coimbra, and you can see the councillors of this new municipality playing the game and seeing the results. And the main results were that, for example, people were really close to the optimal solution and were able to create a plan for the facility location. But one of the main results is, so we can track, this is data collection from the game analysis, if they collaborated or not, communicated, because this was a collaborative game, if there was any dominant players or not. But the most important findings is that they were able to be very close to the optimal solution, but when the people that play the game knew the territory very well, they didn't want the optimal solution. They want a solution to take care about other things like the social impact, the environmental impact, and this way the game helped them to see how much does this preferences cost, and this created a lot of discussions that will never happen if they didn't have a tool like this. And this is a method to do this for other cases. You can see this in my thesis if you want. This is another case that is ongoing. This is a game about, so I am advancing this as fast as I can, not to take more time. And this is a game about transport planning for schools. And you can see here this is the real community of each school analyzing the territory. In this case, the game simulates the regional level, the connections between outside regions to the region that they are playing. You can see here represented by these colored sticks, and then as a framework to plan in the specific surroundings of the school with the priorities of a sustainable transport system that is modeled by these pieces. And then a new case, I will advance with this. This is a case that is happening in Ireland. So this is a case of mimic some of the Minecraft game mechanics with analog games. And we developed several games that started to approach the concepts and then develop them into more detailed things. And then we can mimic some of the core mechanics of Minecraft, of moving cubes, transforming the cubes, and have effects in the environment. In this case, it's a game about a flooding that is, so this project is about climate change. It's a flooding that is menacing a urban region, and players need to work collaboratively to control this flooding and to make decisions about which zones to protect or not, and the impacts that this will have in the region. And the game has several levels. In this case, it's another version of the game that is a semi-cooperative game where the users collaborate, but they have hidden agendas with specific goals. This is to mimic reality, that in these collaborative processes, each participant and stakeholder always have an hidden agenda of something that really wish to do, and sometimes they hide it from the other participants. So again, to approach this, case 7, I will advance this very fast. It's a game about creating a design thinking approach for children. they are representing their school with the pieces, and we see that they represented like a prison, so something for us to think about. And this uses some Tetris mechanism of the cars that are arriving to the school, and that they occupy places that should not be for them, should be for people, and then the children can change the cars, and replace them by more sustainable ways of transportation, like buses and bicycles and walking. And this will free up space that they can add new stuff that they think are important. So this is a part of design thinking stuff. Case 8, I think it's the last one, is a case that I'm doing for Captures, because I work for this nonprofit in the United States that tries to do serious games for preparedness, for example, pandemics and stuff like that. But in this case, it's a game that will be explored in this conference about emergency management. And this case, it's about a region that is facing a very big snowstorm that leads to a blackout, and people in the real time will have to manage this. And this was play tested in Portugal with emergency managers, and was a success. And this is the last version of the game that we will explore in this conference. Just to finish, conclusions, we can say that even analog games can replicate decision making and can create simulations, that these new mechanics and physical components can be a way to do with this if we know the design of these new games. And we can use these games to trigger discussions and to collect data that we will not be able to do by other means, and that participants in this case can be engaged and can collaborate and do and create valuable data and dynamics that will be used by the urban planners, the decision making authorities and municipalities, and the entities that do this. And when we allow participants to do decisions, we can reveal, for example, other dimensions that were not simulated in our models. And this is very useful when we try to address complex issues that are not only modulated or modeled by economy. So this is by money. So this is a good way to do this. And this is also important because in these games people discuss a lot, and some of the times these discussions are the most valuable informations, because these discussions in engage and immersive environment is very important, because then we could create better plans and better solutions for reality. But the limitation is that games take time to do. Balancing this between simulation and playability is also always a problem. And when we try to simplify that is needed to do these games, we sometimes jeopardize the simulation, and this can be problematic. And that game models, we can create a game model to deal with these serious games objectives, and they can be a success if we master the game design elements, also, but also master the simulation at stake. This is why we need experts in the field of the thing we are simulating. And the facilitators are very important for these tasks, because the game itself has a sandbox, even especially when the game allows a lot of agency, a lot of freedom. There's a need for facilitators to help the game to deliver what is intended to deliver. And by the literatures in the literature analysis that I've done, I found that there's a lot of scarcity of frameworks to develop and to facilitate and to develop these game approaches, and that there is a prejudice about games, especially with adults, that think they are not serious enough to deliver these results that we aim for. But usually we overcome this prejudice when these adults experiment the games, and then they see it by doing them, that there really can be powerful tools to explore. And you have here my contact, my website, where you can see some of these game approaches, the published papers, and the other content related to this. And sorry if I was too long with this presentation, but I tried to keep up the time.
Oh, thank you so much. We are It's all fine. It's we still have 15 minutes if we want
Okay,
to.
great.
So thank you so much. I am impressed, of course, by all your projects that you're doing and applications and study cases you can show to us. But instead of me talking a lot, I will give the opportunity to everyone to ask questions. Do we have questions in the classroom? Do you want to come here? I will let them come here so you can see the person.
Yeah, great that we still have time for this.
Right. My name is Emma Rashchan. I come from Slovenia. I'm a visiting scholar here at ISU. I was just interested if you could elaborate a bit more on that on the slide, which was about denazification in Germany, how that helped the theory of games. I couldn't quite put that together. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. This is very curious because this was a restriction, because usually traditional games and the popular ones are about conquering, destroying the other player, competition. And in this case, for example, the version of Risk in Germany was freeing Europe, not conquering. And there were some restrictions to this way to represent the conflicts in games. So people started to do games about different themes and using different mechanics. And this restriction led to a lot of creativity and a lot of new things that now we have. For example, collaborative games. A game where one of the most known ones is Pandemic, where you play together against the pandemics. So you can lose the game altogether if the pandemic wins. It's like you are battling the game system. And for us, from a design perspective, this is very, very interesting because players are working together against the model itself. So it's more like this. And one of the design elements also was avoiding player elimination. In war games and some of the mass market games, for example, Monopoly, you can be eliminated by the game if you don't have money. In these new modern games where you don't eliminate, and this was part of the Nazification, you do not remove people from the game. They are always playing, and there are ways to do this, design element ways. You have people engage every time in the game and all the time, and this is the thing we want in the public participation process. We don't want to exclude the players, and there's ways to do this. For example, the winner is the one with the most score. It's not the one that stands. Transforming games into a race in the limitation of time, and this allows everybody to be in the game all the time. Was this clear?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay,
So
because
we
this
also, yeah,
would take hours with
yeah,
a lot of cases and to
yeah,
show it.
sure. We also have online audience. Is there a question from our online guests? If you have a question,
Sure.
I just want to give you the opportunity. Please.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much for the nice presentation. Interesting. I was just wondering, because as you're emphasizing the part of participation of the communities and how they can share their views and values into, let's say, planning process. And I was wondering, how a game could be very over encompassing and then looking into people of all, let's say, race and income groups and communities. In other words, if you look at the US, for instance, there's a lot more communities who are homeless. Often they're being left out, to be part of the community plan and people of color and all those things, right? So I was wondering how game could be very intrinsic, very inclusive to take those less outliers of populations who otherwise wouldn't be considered into the planning process and their, feedback.
For sure, the games can do this, and they do this. One of the powerful things of analog games is that they tend to be more inclusive sometimes. Because imagine the user does not need to master digital technologies. They just need to move pieces around, and you can help them move the pieces if they cannot or they do not understand it with a good facilitator. This is why the facilitators are very, very important. And with this type of games, you don't need hardware. You can take the games to the communities in their environment. You don't need to bring something that create a wall, like a screen, so they interact directly. So I would say that in this type of media, this is an advantage and an opportunity. Then I would say that from a design perspective, including these groups that sometimes are not represented, it's more from a design perspective. It's something that we can do with design. Sometimes we can create, and I've done this in the past several times, we can create different roles. Sometimes we create total equality, give exactly the same resources to everybody. Sometimes we create different roles, like we create asymmetry. And sometimes if you want to explore that part, you can change the roles to enforce, trying to feel as the other players will fit in that model that you are presenting to them, trying to create empathy. So using the correct game design elements for the thing we want to achieve, we can do it, but this will require some game design knowledge, and of course the psychology of the thing, of the experience also. This is why psychology is very important in this type of games, because we need to at least try to predict how the users will react to the proposal that we are giving them, because it's a proposal of an activity.
Sure. If you allow me to ask one more question, and then, anyway, thank you very much for the nice presentation. Fantastic. And all those algorithms that you take into account, those variability of information is really amazing. And I think you mentioned about the meaningful aspect of the game, which is more like deterministic aspects of the game. And I was wondering, because now with the rise of online games, everything is digital, kids love to be in the digital world, maybe 3 hours a day, if not more. So I was wondering, that is causing a lot more problems into obesity and too much into the media of the screen, and then it also causing effect on the behavior part. So I was wondering, as you show also kind of the physical game. So with the sort of race of digital game versus physical activity-driven games, where do you see, the role of physicality of the games could have a positive contributions towards, let's say, dealing with this obesity problem or behavioral issues that we are often seeing, across the world?
About obesity, for sure they can be a way, especially if you go into LARP, because you can match the physical dimension, because you are doing battles. For example, if the game it's about battles, it could be about anything else. But if you are doing a battle, you will be very tired because it's very demanding. So it's a way to do it. But from a social interaction, this is very curious, because we know the demographics of the players that are playing these modern board games, and usually they are more than 25 years old, from 25 to 50 or 45. It's more or less the demographics, and it's because, and this is the result of people that are into digitalization, full into the digitalization. Sorry, it's easier for me to say. They are users of digital tools. They are totally involved with the state of the art. But usually, after they start working with digital tools every day, they look into something different. And usually, these users are very high educated people that have economic possibilities to do other activities, that have access to all technological tools, but they wish to go into analog because they are seeking something different. And I can say that this happened to me. I started to play more analog games after I started to work all day long with computers, and I stopped playing digital games to start playing analog games. But of course, I also play digital games. But the time that I spent into analog increased a lot because of the overwhelming aspect of digital tools everywhere, and we assume that and make a connection between digital and work. And now things are changing. And when you do social studies about these users, most of the people would say this, that they will want analog because they want to relate with people and they want to disconnect.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for the questions, and we can end on this note because I think it's really a great opportunity for analog games now as well, but also the combination that you mentioned, the hybrid. So even when we are designing the digital, the analog a combination, there is also like the integration of digital and virtual. So digital, so the virtual and analog, I mean the physical. So the new games that are integrating both are very exciting as well. So I think that maybe the next steps will be really the evolution is in thinking about how to integrate those two worlds where
For sure, right?
the digital is taking you into the physical world, like the type of Pokemon, but then also the board game combines with the digital tools to evaluate the game and collect the data and how to do that. I think that these are all the opportunities. So at this note, I will say thank you so much. It was very inspiring. Thank you to all the guests. Mikhail, thank you for sharing. And we will stay connected, of course. I will stop recording and we have a few more minutes to spend in the class. So I will say goodbye as well to thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. You got a big applause.
Great.